Hi guys, and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at the modal scales, how to finger these scales and construct them, and also what kind of chords you can use with the scales, and also what chords get created by the scales. If you like the content in the video, please hit the subscribe button and let's get into it. Hi guys, the first scale that we're going to look at today is the major scale. It's also called the Aeolian Scale in the modes, and I'm going to play across the whole fretboard, so it's a bit longer than an octave. Okay, so the first scale that we're going to play is the G major scale, and it's a very important scale for the modes because it's the parent scale. It's what all of the others are built from. So it's going to be 2-4 on the E string, then we're going to move to 1-2-4 on the A string, 1-3-4 on the D string, 1-3-4 on the G string. Then of course we'll go back down to the beginning of the scale, which is going to be 4-3-1, 4-3-1, 4-2-1, 4-2. Okay, so this scale is the most important scale in terms of building the others. The second scale in the group is called the Dorian Scale, and I'm going to give you the fingering for it. It starts on fret 5 in this key, so every scale that we're going to use is in the key of G. Okay, so it's going to be 1-3-4. Now this scale starts on fret 5, and it's going to be 1-3. Then we're going to go back 1 fret, and it's going to be 1-2-4. 1-2-4, and then we're going to come back down the scale, so it will be 4-2-1, 4-2-1. We need to do a slight shift, 3-1, 4-3-1. Now the way that this scale is created from the major scale is that we got the root, then we've got the second. But this scale has a flattened third, okay, which would be the C. Then we're going to go to the fourth, which is your D. The fifth is an E. Then we're going to go to F sharp, okay, which is the 6, major 6. Then we're going to go to the flat 7, which is G. Then we're going to play the octave. Okay, so that's the scale in 1 octave. The next scale in the group is going to be the B Phrygian Scale. Okay, so this starts on the note B, so it's on the 3rd note of the major scale. Okay, and the fingering for this is going to be 1-2-4 on your E string, 1-3-4 on your A string, 1-3-4 on your D string, 1-3 on your G string, and then we're going to come back down the scale. So 3-1, 4-3-1, 4-3-1, 4-2-1. Okay. The next scale that we're going to do is the Lydian Scale, and it occurs on the 4th note of the major scale, so C, and I'm going to show you the fingering for it now. So it's 2-4, 1-3-4, 1-3-4, 1-3, and obviously we're going to come back down the scale again, 3-1, 4-3-1, 4-3-1, 4-2. It's mainly the same scale as the Phrygian, but we do have to separate them out as individual scales because each scale is going to create a chord. Now these chords we're going to look at a little later, but each scale, as it creates a chord, it creates a system of chords called the Diatonic Chords, which are very prevalent in most styles of music. The next scale that we're going to look at is the D Mixolydian Scale. It occurs on the 5th note of the G major scale, and in this key will be D. The fingering for it is going to be 2, 4 on your E string, 1, 2, 4 on your A string, 1, 2, 4 on your D string, 1, 3, 4 on your G string. Then we have to come back down. So 4, 3, 1, 4, 2, 1, 4, 2, 1, 4, 2. The next scale that we come across is the Aeolian Scale. It's also called the natural minor scale as well. And it's quite an important scale, this one, because it's on the 6th degree of the major scale, and this is where your relative minor lives. So I'm going to play the notes from this scale. So it's going to be 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 1, 2, 4. And we're going to have to come back down the scale. So it's going to be 4, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 3, 1, 4, 3, 1. The last scale in the group is more or less the same as the major scale. It's got an extra note added in, and it's the Locrian Scale. And in this key, it will be the F sharp Locrian. So the fingering for it will be 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, and then we're going to come back down the scale. So 4, 3, 1, 4, 3, 1, 4, 2, 1, 4, 2, 1. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to get into how the different scales are constructed in relation to the major scale. So the notes of the major scale will be root, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and octave. Now when we move to the Dorian scale, you can use a slightly different formula, is a good term that you can use to remember this. So the formula for a Dorian scale is going to be root, second, flat and third, so that's different. Then you've got your fourth, then you've got your fifth, then you've got your major sixth, then you've got your flattened seventh, okay, and then you've got your octave. Okay, now just to give you an example of how these relate to chords, if we go back to our G major chord for G major scale for a second, and we take the root, third, fifth, and optionally the seventh, the type of chord that is created on this major scale is called a G major seventh chord. Okay, so that's our parent chord in this key. When we move to the Dorian scale, if we take the root, which is A, the C, which is the flattened third, the 5, which is the E, and the G, which is the flat 7, we actually get a minor chord that's created on the Dorian scale. So actually the chord that works with the Dorian scale would be an A minor or an A minor 7th chord in this key. Okay, so the 1 chord in the key of G would be a G major or a G major 7. The 2 chord would be a minor chord. It would be an A minor 7. Now these 2 chords are going to sound good together. They're going to be occurring in a lot of songs, so they work well together. Okay, now when we move to the 3rd mode, which is called the Phrygian scale, the type of, if I take the scale and break it down into what the intervals are, we've got the root, we've got the flattened second, we've got the minor third, we've got the 4, we've got the 5, we've got the flattened or the minor 6th, we've got the flattened 7th, and we've got the octave. Now if I make an arpeggio from that scale, so I take the root, the 3rd, the 5th, and the flattened 7th, we get a B minor or a B minor 7th chord. It's always possible to downgrade a chord, so if it's just a B minor arpeggio, that will work. But if we want to make include more notes from the scale, we could add the 7th or the flattened 7th in there, and we would get a B minor 7th arpeggio. Okay, so that means that the first 3 chords, or diatonic chords is really what we should call them in the key of G, are G major 7, A minor 7, B minor 7. Okay, so that means all of these chords are related to each other, they're all in the key of G, and they will all work well together and occur in songs quite often. Okay, now the next scale that we talked about was the Lydian scale. So let's talk about how that's constructed. So the Lydian scale is the root, the second, the third, which is a major third here. Now here's an interesting note that makes this scale different to the major. You've got another interval which is called the sharp 11. Okay, then we've got the 5, then we've got the major 6th, then we've got the major 7, and then we've got the octave. Now the type of chord that this will create if I play an arpeggio will be a major 7th chord if we wanted to add extra notes in there from the scale, or even to be more precise, it would have a major 7 sharp 11. Okay, so to go back over the chords in the key, the diatonic chords so far will be G major 7, A minor 7, B minor 7, C major 7. Okay, now we can downgrade all of these chords if we need to. Okay, now the next chord is a very important chord. It's the 5 chord. It's what we would call the dominant 7th chord. The way that this scale is constructed from the major scale, remember all of our scales, the way that we come up with these formula is to relate them to the major scale. So in order to play the Mixolydian scale, which will be on fret 10, and it will be the note D, it's going to be root, going to be the 2, the major 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, major 6th. Okay, so this is how this scale is different to the major. It has the flattened 7th in it, and then the octave. And that is how you construct your Mixolydian scale from a major scale. If I was to take an arpeggio from this, so take the root, the 3rd, the 5th, the flattened 7th, I would get a dominant 7th chord. Okay, so far in terms of our diatonic chords, we've got G major or G major 7, we've got A minor or A minor 7, we've got B minor or B minor 7, we've got C major or C major 7, we've got D major if it was just a triad, or D dominant 7. Okay, now we're going to hit the 6th note of the scale, and the scale that we're going to play here is the Aeolian. It can also be called the natural minor scale, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how, or what the formula is for this scale and how it's related to the major scale. So you would take the 1st note or the root, you would take the 2nd, you would take the flattened 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, flattened 6th, okay, flattened 7th, and the octave. Now if I make an arpeggio from this scale, it would be root, flat 3, 5, flat 7. So the type of chord that's going to go on the 6th degree is a minor 7th chord. Okay, and we often call this the relative minor. So the relative minor in the key of G major is E minor. Okay, we're going to take a look at the Locrian scale, the last in the group, okay, and look at the formula for it. So it starts with the root, the flat 2, the flat 3, the 4, the flat 5, the flat 6, flat 7, and the octave. Now if I take the chord tones from this scale and I make an arpeggio, I would get the root, flat 3, flat 5, flat 7 and the octave. So the type of chord that's created here would be a minor 7th flat 5 chord, okay? And so let's go back over the type of chords, diatonic chords that are created in this key. So we've got G major or G major 7. We've got A minor or A minor 7. We've got B minor or B minor 7. We've got C major or C major 7. We've got D or D7, D dominant 7 if you like. We've got E minor. We've got F sharp minor 7 flat 5. And we were back at our root again, which would be the G major 7. So what that means is all of those scales are linked together. But it also importantly links the chords together. So if you had a song that had, you know, G in it and A minor and B minor, those chords would sound good together because they're linked by this system. Okay, if you see those chords in a chord progression, you would be able to use these shapes that we've looked today to start to improvise over the top of them. It's very important to understand the connection between the chords and the scales. So the topic really covers the fingerings and the scales as a physical exercise, but also how the chords that they create are linked together. So if we were in the key of G, which in this case we are, we would expect to see many of the chords outlined in this lesson in that song. Okay, now that's not to say that a song doesn't change key, or, you know, there are various reasons why songs utilize different chords in it. But the modal scales and the diatonic chords are linked and are very useful in progressing with music. So I hope you've enjoyed the lesson today, and I hope it's cleared up any issues that you might have with the modal scales and the diatonic chords. Don't forget you need to practice the scales that I've given you. There'll be information as you've seen on the screen and a PDF to go with the lesson to help you memorize the shapes and the scales. Take care.